Okay, let's get started. A very warm welcome to our 89th Security Thought Leadership webinar. And we're here every Tuesdays and Thursdays where we debate a topic of interest to the security world. And one of the features of these webinars is that we don't try and solve problems, we try and critique them. What are ideas? What's the thinking? How can we go about this in a different way? Critique today, a better type of security tomorrow. Just before we get started, and while we're thinking about new ideas, can I please invite you to take part in this survey? What are the impacts of COVID-19 on security? Very specifically, some really good questions we've got for you. If you could spare 10 minutes, perpeturesearch.com, I very much appreciate your views. Now then, today's topics. Today's topic, managing staff travel. What are the security implications in this new normal? This has cropped up quite a few times on these webinars in the past, about what we're going to do about staff travel with all that's going on in the world. And my panelists today come from very different parts of the world purposefully. In fact, you can't get more diverse probably than the United States, Australia and India. So what I'm going to do is, in a second, I'm going to invite my panelists to introduce themselves. And once they've done that, I will then invite them to make their opening statement. 3 minutes where they get the chance to say what they want about this topic. And then we'll come to you, the audience, to ask your questions. So there's a chat button at the bottom where you can chat amongst yourselves. And there's a question and answer button. If you get your questions in early, I will endeavour to incorporate them into the discussion. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. And first of all the way over to Brisbane in Australia. Roger, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much, Martin. My name is Roger Cook. I'm the Global Security Director for World Travel Protection. We're a travel risk management company, part of the Zurich Group, based in Australia, Canada, and throughout Asia and Europe.
Thank you very much indeed, Roger. Samir, over in Delhi.
Hello. Thank you for getting me here. I'm Samir Saxena. I work for a company called Marsh & McLennan Companies. I manage the entire real estate services for them in India. Part of one of the largest associations of corporate services professionals in the country, named Global Association for Corporate Services, where we have got over 5,500 professionals like you who are a part of the forum. It's immense learning, and some of it which I will share today.
Thank you very much indeed. And from India over to the United States of America, in fact in Washington. Michael, introduce yourself.
Hi, Martin. Nice to be here again. I'm Michael Gibbs. I'm an attorney and a security expert for Global Insights and Professional Security. And I also I'm on the board of the Global Life Safety Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, another expert and international panel. So let's hear what they've got to say. 3 minutes for them to give you their views on the topic today. Roger, you first, please. Your opening statement.
I'll do my best, Martin. I can talk about this all night, but 3 minutes. I'll try not to ramble on. I think during the start of the pandemic, the security sector responded exceptionally well in most parts. Those organisations that already had a travel risk management program responded exceptionally well. They were able to pivot very quickly. They were able to inform their travellers of anything as it came to hand. When we saw in the early days, there was multiple pieces of information coming out. Being able to decipher that information and share them with their travellers was paramount. That's if they knew where their travellers were. Those organisations that were playing catch up in that area, obviously very difficult. So without that travel risk management program in place already, we saw a lot of organisations trying to reverse engineer something on the move. One area where I think we were a bit lacking, to call it controversy, is probably in those organisations that produce information on intelligence. We saw a lot of organisations, and some of the big organisations who have, I would say, commercial relationships with organisations like the WHO, who were very quick to follow their lead. And we can remember the issues that we had with WHO and their allegiance to China. And some of that information was really tainted. But that was information that a lot of the security sector relied upon to make their decisions. Now, I saw throughout the sector where professionals were brought in to multifaceted teams, multi-skilled teams with H&S, health and safety, logistics, HR, and they were brought in to create, and to determine thought processes around what is essential travel. Our job as security practitioners is to enable travel. And with these groups, I've seen some great examples where mining companies were able to facilitate operations in remote parts of the world by creating a bubble within a bubble. And this was considered business essential. And with those multi-dimensional teams or multifaceted teams, security, health, safety, logistics, and so on, the security teams were able to provide their inputs to those and enable that business to continue on. Not only do we have business travelers, I did a lot of work in the mining sector. We had a lot of expatriates and assignees that we need to consider as well. And when the pandemic started, and we had people all over the world that either needed to come home or, depending on the situation, could stay in their country of residence where they were working and wait it out. So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and security played a pivotal role in that as well. What's changed? What ways securely managing our staff? I think while travel's been on the back burner, it's actually taken a lot of focus, or it's been a lot of focus for a lot of people. In discussions that I've had in the last 6 months, there's a lot of security professionals and others who have started to pick apart their travel risk management programs, realise what they need, realise what they don't, and move towards a more pragmatic approach. Not give in to fear, not give in to some of the rhetoric that we see out there that travel's scary. As soon as you put your foot out the door, you're in trouble. But realign what is safe travel with the environment they're operating in. And what's that new environment? When we talk about the new normal all the time, the situations or the environments that we travel to, the risk is still there. What might be enhanced with COVID or post-COVID is the impact of the economic locations or the economic environment that we're now traveling into. So before, where we might travel to an environment where we feel safe, medium to low risk, we're now traveling to an environment where half the workforce has been out of work, particularly if it's a tourist destination or the like. And we might see a higher chance of petty theft. We might see an increase in break and enters and these sorts of things where we hadn't seen them before. So those inherent risks have changed, and we need to make sure that we change with those to securely manage our staff as they travel. What are the responsibilities of organisations? The last point there, which should see me out my 3 minutes, really, the basic principles are be able to educate, locate, and communicate to our travellers at all stages. So we rely on multiple sources for that education. Our travel risk management program should have that face-to-face training if the risks require it, online training, and then our intelligence resources where we can provide people specific information or intelligence that meets the risk of the destination they're travelling to, their own inherent risk, and then of the activity that's being conducted as well. And if we can educate our travellers before they go, regardless of the environment, post-COVID or not, we're a long ways ahead of the curve. And then to be able to locate where they're travelling, whether it's itinerary-based or something more substantial, such as GPS tracking. This is where companies need to be fully aware of where their employees are at all times, so that they then can communicate to them any change in their risk profile. So the communication being the last component, whether it's shooting off an email and hoping they get back to us, or actually having that communication confirmed, is really what we want to try and achieve. And that's where organisations are starting to understand these basic principles and starting to look at their programs and put these things in place.
Roger, thank you very much indeed. Excellent, some excellent points there. Just to say to everyone, please use your question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Get your questions in early and we'll endeavour to incorporate them in the discussion that follows. Samir, your opening statement, please.
I think one of the biggest learnings for us as the professionals handling travel, security, and from the industry, I think the biggest learning is, or perhaps the reiteration of the fact is, staff safety is paramount, right? Whenever there is an organization, the organizations are very, very keen and very focused on the fact that the staff cannot under any circumstances could be put at risk. And to be honest, a lot of you who have come to India would see that in a different light, because in Indian context, things have been very, very different. Once upon a time, staff was or perhaps our colleagues were not treated with that respect. But then over last 2 to 3 decades, I think the things have changed. Across the industry, I think we saw some major things happening. Agility is one important part. I think we as professionals have brought it to the forefront. Responsiveness, because all these, whatever was required by the businesses, was to be provided by us. Now, organizations, typically global organizations with India regional offices, were very, very keen to understand what is happening over here. So the kind of response that we had to give was keeping in mind three things. One, one was around the uh, global advisories which were being issued by organizations like WHO and things like that. Then there were regulations which were there from the local organizations or local statutory bodies. India has a unique mix because of multiple states with so many states, union territories, and everyone adopting a different kind of an approach to protect their own areas against COVID. I think it was it was extremely different, extremely difficult, and and the regulations in each state in each area were changing almost on a day-to-day basis. I think that was something which was creating a huge problem for us. And third was the organization mandates. Various kinds of organizations, various industries, I think they had created different kind of insights, or they have created different kinds of guidelines for the colleagues to follow. And that is all three put together were being projected as the way that we as professionals could advise our business partners, our travelers, our colleagues on what is to be done. India also had one unique challenge, which was around the back offices. So we have got huge back offices, and they are the ones during this time they were still managing the finance operations, they were still managing the banking operations, the health sector, etc., etc., insurance as well, and those under any circumstances could not have been shut down, and this posed a different kind of a challenge to all of us. Uh, but then, yeah, government was supportive. We had to make inroads uh, into multiple places, but then we were able to support the businesses and support the business requirements which were there from around the globe. One of the biggest thing as security and safety professionals, I think, which came uh, from the industry was we were asked to think out of the box. Our our job descriptions was not only limited to only these two things. Our job description suddenly enhanced to enabling colleagues working at home. India being such a regulated market in terms of infosec compliances which are needed, I think all majority of them used to work on desktop. So enabling colleagues to be working in laptops, I think that was another dimension to the whole piece. Uh, Connect with industry bodies. I think that is one of the most important part which all of us over here did, which helped us not only to make inroads within the government circles, within the organizations, but also helped us to make our travel risk management profiles and support the and support our colleagues moving here and there. Uh, as I was mentioning, multiple sectors in India, they responded differently. The telecom sector responded differently. Uh, the energy sector responded differently. Insurance differently. And since these organizations had so much of presence, or the number of people employed was so much or so high, I think it brought extremely different kind of challenges with every region, every geography. Somewhere the COVID was spreading fast, somewhere it was not so fast, and some of the places it did not even touch in the initial phase. But then, yes, the precautions were in place. So I think overall, overall, the situations were very challenging. We were asked to be agile, or we were supposed to be agile, and we were supposed to be extremely responsive. One of the big learnings for all of us as professionals was, I would perhaps echo what Roger says over here. Um it was communicate and over communicate. The the underlying thing at somewhere was over communicate, so that you could understand the perspective of your business, or the business could understand your perspective, because at times the things were extremely unreasonable which were coming to us, but then we need to cater to all those requirements. So that's about it.
Thank you very much, Samir. I'm going to say thank you very much indeed for that. Really appreciate that. Just to say to the audience, question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Get your questions in. By the time Michael's finished, and we'll try and incorporate the questions. Michael, your opening statement, please.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. What security and business in general has learned through all this is that a lot of travel isn't strictly necessary. It's nice for sure, added value often, existential or critical rarely. What's changed is the perception that travel is a sine qua non of business. I think a lot of businesses are suffering from the economic fallout, and the double-edged sword, or the two sides of the coin, is that, well, they're saving money on travel, lodging, and food, but that's ravaging the transportation and hospitality and food industries. So, I asked what's happening now. The biggest issues now really revolve around the vaccine and policies around the vaccine. I did some of my own research, talked to, kind of gathered information on more than 100 companies, most based in the United States. And about a third that I've examined have started on plans regarding vaccines in the workplace, while the rest are discussing it. As for whether they will require international travel, very few companies have decided one way or the other. 5% said yes, they'll require it. 12% said they won't, and the rest of them either haven't discussed it yet or are still deciding. Among the other information that I asked, it's whether, if you require vaccination, will you require documentation for travel? And almost no one has decided on that yet. So we're talking cutting edge issues here. Only 5% say they'll require proof, 1% says they won't, and 50% even haven't discussed it, and 25% haven't fleshed out the issues yet. And then there's an issue of who's going to pay for vaccines if they are required. Again, most of them are just talking about it or haven't even gotten to that yet. 20% said that they'll pay for them, and only a handful said they won't, with most undecided. The other big issues related to that I've been seeing is the availability and efficacy of vaccines. Who can get them? Is it fair? And do they really work? If they're going to mandate vaccines, how are you going to do that? How are you going to justify that? How are you going to deal with anti-vaxxers? I don't know about the rest of the world, but in the United States, people denying that vaccines work or that they cause problems like autism is fairly prominent. There's also people who have legitimate health issues that they are not be able to be vaccinated. So what do you do with those people? There's international entry requirements that you have to deal with. Every country is going to have its own laws about who can come in. And then what about staff leave if they have bad reactions to vaccines? And the last thing is, companies generally have duty of care to their employees, but what's going to happen, with their duty of care policies? They're going to have to sort of rethink them, or, what if someone's too afraid to travel? Can you require them? What if they need to stay somewhere that's verified as safe, and they said, "Oh, I'm going to stay in this place," and it breaks the budget of the company. So those are the kinds of things that I'm hearing that are coming up. Thank you.
Really good, Michael. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's, without further ado, get to the questions. Roger, I'll come to you first, if I might, please. And a question from James Gribbin, who says, and it's a big question. I'm going to have to ask you to narrow it down and focus. What elements of a travel risk management program could be improved and what could be dismissed? And an interesting point, isn't it? I mean, headline issues, Roger, it gives us a guide where we might go.
It's a great question. It is very broad, and obviously there's a lot of factors that come into play with regards to the risks associated with the activities being conducted and who they're being conducted by. But I think to break it down, and given what we've gone through with COVID, and to some of Mike's points there about the individual and their thought process, is to make that travel risk management program more about the traveller. I've seen it numerous times where at the point of sale, or when we're negotiating our travel risk management providers, we're talking about the tech, we're talking about the portals, we're talking about the apps, we're talking about the shiny buttons and these sorts of things, which are great at the point of sale. But for the basic traveller, they might be aware of the app because they get the odd alert. They might be aware that they can press that button, they can get through to talk to somebody, if they need it. But when something happens, where, as we know, people don't respond like they should respond all the time. So that capacity building for the traveller is paramount. I talked a little bit about face-to-face training becoming more and more popular, given social distancing. That's becoming less and less likely. But training for the right environment, training aimed at the right type of training aimed at the individual, is where our travel risk management programs can improve. So that when something does go wrong, the traveller knows who to go to and when to go to them. Obviously, the tech's critical. It's great for the manager. It's great for the risk manager or the security manager who's got oversight of the program, and they can see where their travellers are, which they need to be able to determine where they are and what risks they face, and then to communicate to them. But I think that's one aspect that we could drill down upon and improve.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. Samir, same to you. Anything you'd like to add to that in terms of what could be improved and potentially what could be dismissed from travel risk management programs? Just to be concise, if you wouldn't mind, because it's a big question, I know, Samir.
I would perhaps only limit it to a couple of sentences, nothing more than that, right? I think it is more about defining the adequate need uh, by the colleague to travel. I think right now at this point of time, since our challenges are extremely limited, or our focus areas are extremely limited in terms of keeping in mind the safety of an individual. So I think overall the program would cater to restricting the travels for various organizations, for various travelers, and keeping in mind that if the work could have been executed during the lockdown, during the other phase, by face to face, by through video calls, through webinars and other things, I think the same could be executed right now. Till the time the vaccinations are in place, till the time the health authorities are appropriately aware of the circumstances, and they are able to provide the right kind of solution to the or right kind of comfort to the travelers. I think the major focus from the organization is in India is to limit the travel, and I think that's what would be the key for us as of now. I think prevention is better than cure.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Michael, this point, isn't it? It's a really big issue. As Roger said, it's a good question, really. Just give you a chance for your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thanks. I think rather than doing away with anything, as a frequent traveler myself, I fall into many of the habits of a traveler. It's not going to happen to me. I mean, it's getting people to take this kind of stuff seriously. And I think Roger mentioned this. There are a lot of threats out there. What is most likely to happen? Depending on where you go, we're telling people, okay, there's street crime, okay, there's terrorism, there's this, there's COVID. It's much more likely that they're going to have some sort of health issue, a personal health issue. They're going to forget their medication at home. They may have, heart attack or some other sort of ailment. So I think we really need to drive it home. Right now, COVID has sucked everything else out of the room. As a matter of fact, I think International SOS did a survey on 1,400 travel risk managers, and they said that the normal things that they're worried about, civil unrest, political, geographical instability, travel risk managers are only half as worried about that than they used to be. Well, that may be because no one's traveling, and you're not going to be walking around outside anyway and getting into things if the whole place is on lockdown. But still, we're getting myopic about it. We're saying it's only COVID. So I see the issue as really traveler awareness, and both Roger and Samir said this about the communication of sort of what the whole array of risks and what to emphasize, and so I wouldn't cut anything out. I'd just be more focused about it.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Michael, since you mentioned the next topic first, I'm going to come to you first. It's from Roger Warwick, who's actually himself an expert in this subject area and does this. Roger asked the point, do you think that duty of care has now at last come fully into the security domain? And I suppose the follow-up, Michael, is if the answer is yes, how is that going to pan out? And I'll come to you first and I'll come to Roger on this issue. So Michael first.
Yeah, I think duty of care, at least as I know it, which is the general duty of care clause in the Occupational Safety and Health Act in the United States, it's long been embedded in security. It's so general, though. The question is how it's going to be interpreted. Here in the United States under OSHA, the duty of care was generally ascribed to traveling employees. And everybody thought, okay, it's when they travel internationally. A lot of what was forgotten was that, no, it's nationally too. American cities are often every bit as dangerous as any other city around the world. but as far as duty of care, there's also duty of care of people at home. And that's what people haven't been thinking about. It's not necessarily, walking down the stairs to your home office, but it might be things like whether you're provisioned correctly, even whether your ergonomics are right in your office. But I think that the duty of care for the travelers, it's going to bring up more focused questions that I mentioned earlier about, to what extent can we accommodate people who don't want to travel, who can't travel, who say, I'm taking care of someone at home, I don't want to bring anything back. Those things are already starting to happen. They're pretty widespread. And you'll ask, I'm an attorney and I've asked other attorneys, this is all being worked out. Nobody really knows the answer to this stuff, at least in the United States.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Roger, I'm interested in your views on the same question. Duty of care, Roger.
I'd hate to burst Roger's bubble, but I don't think it's going to come to security anytime soon. In fact, I think the definitions become more and more broad after COVID. And I look at some of these organisations that have continued to travel, and to Samir's point about reducing travel, there's just some jobs you can't do at home. We have to send people to manufacturing sites, mining sites, agricultural sites, and they have to travel long distances. And we're starting to see companies really obviously concerned for their employees, but start to look at duty of care and concern for families who are used to their partner going away for 6 weeks at a time, potentially. But because of COVID and flight restrictions, some of these rosters have had to double, and they're away for longer stretches of times. So we're seeing some companies now take that duty of care really outside the workplace and apply it to those people who are supporting their employees. So I think duty of care will continue to be this moving feast. I don't think it's going to come quickly into the security space.
It's interesting. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sure we're going to come back to it. A big issue and one to watch. It's evolving, I suppose. Let me come to you, Samir, and a question from Gordon Knight. Now Gordon's raised a point about security of employees when not at work. Slightly touched on there by Roger when he spoke about family, just extending the sort of focus. And I suppose there's another issue related to this. About when employees are traveling to work and from work. So let me come to you first, and perhaps I'll come back to Roger for a comment on this as well. Samir.
Yeah, I think this is one of the big issues, right? As far as India. So my answers is primarily India specific, because there are issues around it, and that we have been struggling a lot since last 2 to 3 decades. This has happened, and in today's context. So I think I'll take one would be pre-COVID, and I'll quickly amalgamate to the post-COVID era, right? So there were issues since the time India opened up its door for globalization and 1990s, late 1990s onward. So there was a lot of outflow or inflow of work for us, and that's where the challenges started cropping up when it was around traveling, whether it was intercity traveling, intracity traveling, or domestic travels, taking flights and things like that. So at least from home to traveling to work, I think this was one of the major areas. And there have been things which have happened leaps and bound to ensure safe and secure travel to each and every employee, each and every colleague to office. And every pickup, every drop, every movement is tracked on GPSs. There are huge command centers, there are control centers with alarm buttons and things like that, which actually ensures colleagues colleagues who are traveling to office, coming back, they feel safe. Another few points which government has taken up, in fact another few steps that government has taken up to give enhanced security to the women travelers in India, is that after sunset to before sunrise, if a woman is to travel in a cab, they have to be provided a security escort, and that escort will ensure that the woman is dropped not to the nearest point, but to her home. So I think that's the kind of focus which has been brought in overhead. Now, this actually gets multifold, I would say, extremely impactful when you talk of the travel during the COVID times. Now, additionally, you need to safeguard the employee, the escort, as well as the driver from infecting each other, or ensuring the safe commute. Uh, which is not only in terms of physical safety, but also in terms of the well-being of an employee or a colleague to various to their homes, to from the homes to the office and back. So I think there are multiple steps which have been taken. There are specific transport operators. There have been solutions which have been crafted as part of safety professionals, as part of security professionals. We are deeply involved in evaluating and signing off these solutions, which actually help the employees gain confidence to be coming back. As we speak, the numbers in India is going down, and we are likely to see numbers rising in terms of people coming back to the office.
Thank you very much indeed, Samir. Roger, let me come to you on this. We talk about travel, don't we, internationally, but what about these other aspects of to and from work and while at home? Your thoughts, Roger?
I'm going to paint a slightly different picture, and if we consider that we can't leave our destinations and travel to our work sites, and mining and agriculture are great examples of this. What a lot of companies have done is engage somebody local to conduct the work that they normally would have done when they travel. So there's governance roles that still need to be done. There's inspections that needed to be done. So what they've decided to do is find somebody in that region that can travel under the COVID restrictions and go and do that work. Obviously, following contractual guidelines and due diligence and all these sorts of things. So we're seeing that across multiple industries. Sometimes these relationships are already in place, and these people they're aware of the sites, and a lot of times they're not. So we're talking about a new organisation or a new subcontractor or contractor being brought in and travelling under COVID restrictions to our sites to do this work. So that adds a complexity that is already there, given that travel risk management is a focus for the group. Now we have another group we have to bring into that, and they need to follow our guidelines and responsibilities with regards to travel. So that's the largest sort of picture with regards to not being able to travel here. What's the impact? We still have to do the work. We get somebody else to do it. They then come under our umbrella from a travel risk management perspective. So domestic travel, I think, obviously depends on the jurisdiction. Companies have been very quick to refocus their workforce where they can to keep them at home domestically, and they just had to work around the constraints. And we've seen that throughout the world, where different parts of the country are locked down at different times, and I think companies have been able to manage that quite well.
Yeah, interesting. And just very quickly, Roger, when we go back to work, the process of getting people to and from work, is that going to become a corporate responsibility now?
Again, it will definitely depend on the jurisdiction. I think if we look at countries where there's an expectation that we're not going to come into work until the public transport's safe, or we've got alternative means of transport, the companies are going to be forced into providing that transport to bring people to the office. In other jurisdictions, there's reduced work hours. We've just started to come back into the office full time here in Brisbane. We've been very fortunate, but up until the end of last year, it was 2 or 3 days a week. So we just sort of slowly evolved to having everyone back in the office. If you're in a jurisdiction where the public transport's not going to be safe for a long period of time, but the risk through the contacting in the community is low, then it might behove that organisation to put that transport on, if that's their intent.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Gordon Knight, for your question. Let's go a bit faster now, because we're coming to the last third of the programme, and there's quite a lot of questions I'd like to get in. Michael, Luke Elliott, how are you seeing companies determine what is essential travel, and how are you seeing it being enforced? Very good question, Michael. Your thoughts from Luke Elliott?
Yeah, sure. It is a great question. Essential travel is travel that it's gonna be a roundabout, but essential to doing business. So it could be a way to cement a deal where you need to be in person. It could be, most likely what we've been seeing is it's people, it's engineers who have to be on site. It's people doing audits, for compliance. It's not, going to a conference. It's not generally going to a meeting that can be done over Zoom. It's really things where you physically need to be at that site. It's security professionals going and doing site visits and maintenance and things like that. So those are the kinds of areas where that's essential travel.
Yeah, okay, Roger, very quickly, I think you had on this definition of essential.
It definitely depends on the individual and the company. I think at times I've seen people push to travel because of personal reasons and they felt the need to be there. But really, some of the examples that Mike gave a spot on. I've seen people travel. Accountants travel to West Africa to make sure that the accounting processes were done on time and done on point for the end of financial year. So really it does depend on the organisation, what they consider to be essential. As a security practitioner, it's our job to enable that travel. If the business deems it essential and we deem that we can get them there, then that's our job.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Just stick with you, Roger, if I might, because Roger Warwick has asked an interesting question, actually. I just want to get this in, because you've used the term travel risk management a couple of times.
Yep.
And his point is we shouldn't, we all use the term travel risk management instead of travel security. It sounds better, but this is creating problems with ISO, the development of standards. Roger, is that right? Are you going to use travel security?
No, I think I'll upset the doctors, paramedics, and nurses that I work with if I keep using travel security. So, travel risk management is more than just a security component, and I think Mike touched on it as well. You're more likely to have a health issue when you travel. We talk about the tech associated with the tracking and monitoring and communication to travelers. That's more than travel security. So I think travel risk management, and I know there's a standard being developed. It does get confusing for people, but I feel it's here to stay.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Samir, let me come to a question from Ravi Kiran. And he's asking about the shift in international travel with the vaccine rollout. There's been a big debate in the United Kingdom, actually, here, Samir, whether airlines can ask people whether they've been vaccinated or not. We're talking here about a passport of some description, although there's some dispute about whether it can be called a passport before they arrive. Where are you in India with this, and what's your view on the likely effectiveness of it? Samir, this question is from Ravi Kiran. So you must be on mute, Samir. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Good.
So as far as India is concerned, and as far as the vaccinations are concerned, right? As for currently, we have already done 4.5 million vaccinations, and what looks to us is the international travel once it starts back. So right now, with the short-term requirements being catered to through going through multiple channels and things like that, which is purely essential travel. Uh, Once it comes back to normal, so yellow fever card kind of a solution may be something which may be implemented. As far as India is concerned, doesn't look like neither India is contemplating anything like that, or anything like that is in news or is in discussions. But what I definitely see that there is a strong possibility of a lot of countries adopting to some norms to restrict uh, travelers from a specific region where you have high infections of COVID which have been reported, or things like that. So chances of getting something like that on a long term uh, long term arrangement basis, or during the long term, is I don't deny that, but I don't foresee it coming aggressively as we speak, because all the countries have still blocked the international travel. And if the second wave continues, and if the second wave continues to hit other countries as well, I think then there will be a serious debate around it, and then you may see a restriction, you may see some passport stamping, etc., etc. But as far as India is concerned, doesn't look like they have not yet opened the international travel. Once it will open up, more details will follow in, but then chances of this going a long way, because this is not something which is incurable, right? We have seen that the fatality rate across the globe is around 1.5 to 2%, which is typically of a viral fever. So looking at that severity, I don't see that this is going to pursue further, but then let's wait and watch.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to be very quick now. Michael, come to you first, and then I'm going to ask you, Roger, for another quick comment straight afterwards. Nick Probert says, assuming international doesn't recover, what options will fill the void? So Michael, first of all, how long do you think it will take international travel to recover? And we've got voids like using other people to do the work. Your thoughts, and I'll come back to Roger.
I think international travel will recover. People have wanderlust. People still want to travel for vacations, see family, celebrate events, and we'll start getting into more of the work travel as well when we see the value of in-person contact and interaction. But it's going to take a while because not that many people are rushing off to do it. I think at least through 2020, 2021, we will see a slow trickle, and it all depends on the rate of vaccination, how effective that is, and how available it is. It's not even available in certain parts of the world, and how widely taken up it is. There are big parts of the United States that are not interested in the vaccine. So I think you're gonna have to look at it, infection rates by region, and say, okay, here's a place we could travel, we feel comfortable with. But I don't see I don't see international business travel getting back to normal anytime, at least for another year, or probably even more than that.
Okay, thank you. Roger, can you be more optimistic than that or not?
I'm afraid not. I think 2022 is likely to have some sort of normalcy around it. You know, there's some pundits here in Australia yesterday talking about it taking between 5 to 6 years to have, you know, broad vaccination across the globe. And to one of the last question, I think I might be able to get a vaccine here. I might get the Pfizer vaccine in Australia, but will China let me into China with that vaccine, or do I need to get their vaccine? So we're going to come across those issues. Now, we know there's going to be some sort of passport that's going to have to be government-led. I know there's a whole heap of things being done in that space, but we won't need that passport, I don't think, until 2022.
Just one very, very final question, Roger. If I could just ask you to be just sort of 30 seconds, because it's we're getting late. Dinesh Elangovan, I hope I pronounced that right, Dinesh, is asking about the tick boxes a traveller is going to have to get through. Just obviously, you've got the COVID-19 one, but is that tick box going to change dramatically, Roger, or is it just the same as before with this one?
I think we're going to see driven by governments, but then enforced by airlines, a lot more restrictions before we board. I think we're going to go back to the days of carrying around a lot of paperwork with our itineraries and making sure that we've got everything lined up as we should, whether it's tick sheets when we arrive in the arrivals lounge, or whether it's pre-departure and the airlines check it off before we go. I think there will be a certain amount of rigmarole there. And if we're doing multi-leg trips, which a lot of business travelers do to get to destinations, it's going to become more and more complex. And this opens us up to interpretation by customs officials at the other end. So it really is a complex situation with regards to the traveller's requirements on arrival. But I think, pre-departure, that's where the work will be done.
I hadn't thought of that one. That's a really interesting one. Okay, I'm just going to ask you for 10 seconds each, and I'm going to hold you 10 seconds. I know it's unfair. Final comment on this issue of staff travel. Samir first, then Michael, then Roger. Samir, 10 seconds if you wouldn't mind. Big picture here. Strategically, what are the key things perhaps organisations need to think about in terms of next steps on managing this issue? Samir, 10 seconds, please.
Okay, so I think from an organization perspective, the first and foremost thing is why. I think they need to identify and articulate for themselves and let us know the enabling professionals to ensure that we provide them the appropriate support. So I think once the organization define it, I think we could work on and enable the colleagues to move ahead. But I definitely see a lot of change the way work from home is going to be, and the way there will be hub and spoke model in the real estate. I'm definitely going to see a lot of change in the travel within times to come.
Samir, thank you very much indeed. Michael, I'm going to hold you to your 10 seconds because we're running out of time. Michael, 10 seconds.
Vaccine policy, accommodating work from home, and use Zoom and other as long as you can.
Okay, Roger.
Get out of the office, start traveling, but dust off your travel risk management plan. Make sure you've got one. Make sure it's fit for purpose, and make sure it supports the traveller.
Thank you very much indeed. Fantastic conversation. And we could have gone on, and this is always the way. I'm sure it's a topic we'll return to in due course. Thank you very much indeed, panel, and thank you very much indeed, audience, for questions. Just a few final comments, if I might, just to say that the UK Outstanding Security Performance Awards, live ceremony, online, free to attend, but you have to register. Do get your registration in early. Those who come first, you will not have seen a show like this before. I was with Christine Brooks yesterday doing some filming on it. It's a bit different, I promise you. Just to say that entries are closing in Nigeria and South Africa on those dates, but they're opening in a lot more countries. So stand by on the OSPA's website to find out whether your country is opening soon. And then to say that ASAS Europe, who have been very supportive of today's webinar, have their conference starting this afternoon. It's online. Anyone can join. There are details. Several days actually taking place between now and June, as well as an on-site conference. One hopes, depending whether we can travel, of course. Finally to say, we'll be with you again on next Tuesday. And the subject at the normal time is mindfulness and its potential to drive security performance. What are the opportunities and drawbacks? You've heard a lot about this. We've got 3 experts who are going to examine this with very different views, I might add, on its potential. That's next Tuesday at the normal time, 3:30 Greenwich Mean Time. Once again, thank you very much indeed to you, the audience around the world. Thank you very much indeed to my panelists around the world. And I hope to see you all on Tuesday at 2:30, if not this afternoon at the conference. And wherever you are in the world, until we meet again, stay safe.